ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We will begin by taking roll.
Amy Burrows.
Here.
Lila Rosenfield.
Here.
Brian Scott.
Here.
Anna Sullivan.
Here.
That's a quorum.
All right. Moving on to report of the chair and vice chair. I do not have anything to report. Our vice chair is not here this week. So we will move to the report of the director.
I don't actually have anything to report this week either. We're in like the lull between city council meetings, so there's no updates.
Cool. All right. Thank you. To our open forum. So this is a 10-minute segment where if commissioners have something they want to bring up that's not directly tied to an agenda item, we can discuss that. Is there anything anyone wanted to talk about?
I have a question about public comments. If you get a lot of public comments that seem to apply to a different department in the city, do you share those public comments with that department or with someone else?
In response to like like something coming before the planning commission, or
Well, like if the comments are directed towards a planning commission application, but they seem to apply to a different department, like enforcement or something like that, would you share those comments? Does that information get from here to there?
Yeah, if it's something like that, we will.
Okay.
If it's sometimes we'll get comments about they disagree with or they don't think that a department is doing their job or applying their regulations correctly. Those, we share, but there's really without any background. But if it's like a legitimate issue that someone raises as part of their public comments, we'll share it with whomever is the responsible department or division.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then we will move along to our consent agenda, which has 3 items this week. It's the approval of the minutes for June 10th, an extension request for planned development at approximately 552 North, 1500 West, and the third one is another extension request for a planned development at approximately 843 West Hoyt Place. And those do not have public hearing, so we will just move to discussion or a motion.
I move to pass the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett. Commissioner Rosenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
All right, so that passes. On to our regular agenda. The first item up is item 4 there. The zoning map amendment and general plan amendment at approximately 1990 South, 500 East, and 2002 South, 500 East.
Sorry, one moment. Technical difficulties. Okay, here we go. Thank you. All right, my name is Cassie Younger, and I am presenting on the Wells on Fifth zoning map and general plan amendment. This request is this is a request by Castlewood Development and is for a zoning map and general plan amendment at 1990 and 2002 South 500 East. The current zoning is R1 5000 and is proposed to be changed to RMF 35, a moderate density multifamily residential district. This also requires an amendment to the central community future land use map from low density residential to medium density residential. The subject property is 1990 and 2002 South 500 East and is 1.03 acres. This site has 3 frontages along 500 East, Hollywood, and Redondo Avenue. It was previously the historic Wells Ward Meeting House. This meeting house burned down in 2024 and has been vacant ever since. The property lies within the Liberty neighborhood, about a mile west of Sugar House downtown. The site is 1 block north of 2100 South, which is zoned primarily MU3 and has a variety of small businesses and townhomes. While the blocks north are primarily R1 5000, there are some pockets of RMF 35 nearby, like the senior living facility and the recently rezoned Sears site on 400 East. This site has a variety of transit options close by, with a UTA bus stop 1 block north on 500 East and an S-Line station 0.3 miles south. The proposed development offers 22 townhomes, each with 4 bedrooms and 3.5 baths. Each unit has a 2-car garage, and the site offers 8 guest parking stalls on site. The site plan proposes over 12,000 square feet of open space, including a playground amenity. And while the RMF 35 zone allows up to 35 feet in height, the development is proposing to cap it at 30 feet. The community benefit offered is that all of these are family-sized units with over 3 bedrooms and 3 baths, and these units will all be offered for sale. The open space is over 3 times the required amount for this development, and the open space is mostly contiguous with over 3,000 square feet of a playground. The applicant has also offered to integrate an educational component to the play area to make the installation more engaging and interactive for children. The zoning map request is to allow for this type of development since R1 zones do not allow single-family attached or townhomes in this district and have a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. The general plan amendment would also accommodate this type of density to develop, which is proposed at 21.3 units an acre, which is considered medium density residential on the future land use map of the community plan. Shown here is a table that compares the existing zone with the proposed zone RMF 35 and also the development standards of the proposed project. You can see by this table they are not proposing to build to the maximum height or density that the zone would allow. While the RMF 35 zone would allow up to 59 lots for the lot size requirement, the applicant is only proposing 22. Many aspects of this proposed development actually comply with the standards of the RMF 30 zone, which is our low-density multifamily residential zone, including the density of 22 units and the height cap of 30 feet. The applicant is requesting the RMF 35 instead due to the smaller front yard requirements. This allows them to keep the majority of their open space within the interior of the site plan, within the greenways and playground amenity, instead of accommodating a larger front setback. The applicant presented at the Liberty Wells Community Council and received a lot of public feedback on their project. The applicant then revised their design after the meeting to accommodate some of the concerns. This included decreasing the number of units from 24 to 22, adding 8 guest parking stalls, and increasing the setbacks along Redondo Ave and Hollywood from 10 feet to 13 and 14. These changes to the plan are proposed to be included in the development agreement and have been listed in the conditions of approval. The proposed amendments align with citywide and community plans and the housing plan, SLC, all of which advocate for medium-density housing options, particularly those near transit and commercial areas, which this site is near both of. The proposed community benefit aligns with our standards by providing housing that meets the needs of the current and future community. Family-sized housing is a real need in Salt Lake City and has become a priority of the mayor to attract families to Salt Lake. The unit size, floor plans, and playground amenity of this development aim to attract growing families to the Liberty Wells neighborhood. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council with the following conditions, which includes the proposed community benefit and the site design changes to better align with the existing development in the community.
All right, do we have any clarifying questions or comments before we go to public comment?
I have a question. I noticed that there were a number of comments that said something about $580,000 price point and HOA fees, but that's not anywhere in the packet. I was wondering where those numbers might have come from.
I believe they did list the market price at the Liberty Wells Community Council.
Okay.
That was discussed.
The conditions will be part of like a development agreement if the property is rezoned? So does that stay with the property if somebody else buys this property and it's rezoned, that development agreement will be applied to them too? And then does that development agreement ever expire, like in 50 years if somebody builds something different, or would they have to come for approval to get the development agreement to end, or?
I think we put a 30-year term on that.
We can associate a term with them, but
You can say-
many development agreements run in perpetuity.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
All right, then we will go ahead and open up for public comment. If you are going to speak, you can step up to the podium there. You'll have 2 minutes or 5 if you're a representative of a recognized community organization. And please state your name at the beginning of your,
The applicant is also here.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
for-
jumping ahead, my bad. Do they have a presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay, if you guys would like to come and give that. Sorry about that.
You can sit here and then.
Perfect. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Haley Pratt. I'm representing Castlewood Development, the applicant. Rather than spend time repeating a lot of staff's presentation, I wanted to focus on some of the key items of the project, then hit on a theme that we are seeing in some of the residents' concerns and how we responded to them. So, our proposed development is 22 family-oriented townhomes that are for-sale townhomes that's on a vacant site within walking distance of transit, parks, schools, and commercial services. It provides missing middle housing opportunities without displacing any residents or commercial uses. When approaching the design, we heard loud and clear that family-oriented housing was a priority in the city. And so when we were looking at our floor plans and the site layout, we tried to keep that in mind. So all of our units have 4 bedrooms, with 3 bedrooms being on one floor, catering to that family dynamic. And then every unit has a 2-car garage. We also, when designing the site, one of the priorities was trying to limit any vehicular and pedestrian conflict points for every unit within the project. So every unit actually has a pathway that connects to our central pocket park, avoiding any vehicular and pedestrian points of conflict. Highlighting again that family-focused approach to how we laid out the project. And as Cassie mentioned, we're 3 times the required open space in quantity, but we're also really hitting on quality. So here's a concept design of how the pocket park, we envision it progressing. We have 2 playground amenity features, and then we also have multiple elements of that educational play components for building off that playful learning landscapes concept. Now, moving on to community feedback. There were 3 themes that came up in the community council meeting, and then also subsequently the staff report included many comments. And the 3 concerns that I heard were, among others, but primarily density, building scale and height, and parking. Here's an exhibit that just shows that our old plan had 24 units. Our new plan has 22, so we've reduced by 2 units. The second issue was scale and height, and we've addressed that in a few different ways. The first is setbacks. So we've increased our front setbacks along Hollywood and Redondo by about 3 to 4 feet, which is the red. And then the green exhibit is just to show you how substantial that setback is. So from the property line, it's about 13 to 14 feet. And if you measure actually from the back of walk, it's closer to 16 to 17 feet. And then this is an exhibit just showing how it generally aligns with what's existing within the neighborhood context. Cassie mentioned this, but we're capping our height at 38 feet. The adjacent zone permits up to 28 feet, so we're 2 feet difference. And then by removing units, we were actually able to really add a substantial amount of space between the western property boundary, which is where we're abutting those existing single-family homes. The red squares are where buildings were previously, and now our average western setback is 40 feet. We do have one point that's a little bit closer, and that's because we needed a fire turnaround. But it is going side to side with an existing home, so it doesn't have those views or privacy concerns that oftentimes come up with new development. And last but not least, parking. Again, every unit has 2 stalls, and then we've accommodated an additional 8 parking stalls for guests. So our average is we're at 2.36 stalls per unit, which is well above city code. It's well above approved neighboring townhome projects that I know have some residents voiced some spillover concerns. And it's honestly well over above a lot of the existing bungalows in the neighborhood. Just to wrap it up, this site is large enough to accommodate family-sized homes, meaningful setbacks, and a substantial pocket park and greenway. If the property remains R1 5000, we'd likely only see about 7 single-family homes with no sort of shared amenity space. Our proposal allows 22 families to live in a highly connected and desirable neighborhood, while providing the open space and ownership opportunities that simply wouldn't exist with the current zone. It's a vacant parcel near transit, so we're not displacing any residents or commercial businesses. We really hope that you recognize the unique opportunity this site presents. Its proximity to transit, the parks, schools, and just everyday services really makes it well positioned to deliver meaningful family home ownership. And in doing so, it directly supports the city's goals of attracting and retaining those families within the city. So I appreciate your time. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I can also come up if there are any specific comments or questions that come up with more public comments. Oh, okay, cool. Yep, happy to.
All right, thank you. Then now we will go to public comments. So first I have Sean Steinman, if you'd like to step up to the mic there. You have 2 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me out. My name is Sean Steinman. I'm at 1240 East Stringham Avenue. This project is pretty well thought out. A project like this, I think, allows for attainable housing that is much needed in a community like this. You look at the average median income within Salt Lake City, average median household price, it's about $600,000. If we were to have, 10 to 12 single-family homes here, it would probably have to be $1 to $2 million per home on this. So attainable housing is one of the biggest issues within the state of Utah right now, and I know that Mayor Mendenhall is very passionate about getting more attainable. This is something that we'd be able to see houses that, my kids and my grandkids could afford, especially with having 4-bedroom homes versus getting them into a 1,500 square foot bungalow that's 100 plus years old that has seismic issues and all kinds of stuff. So for me, I look at a project like this and the intentionality behind a project like this, and I see an incredible opportunity for home ownership versus just getting any type of rental options here. Home ownership, if you look at the stats, nationwide stats, most homeowners, and the average homeowner's net worth is right around $400,000 versus renters are right around $7,000. So getting an intentional for sale product in the neighborhood like this is something I support greatly. And I know that there's going to be a whole bunch of people that don't want something like this in your backyard, but looking at the mayor's initiative and the governor's initiative within the state of Utah and within the city, I really want to just ask for the commission and for the council to really be thoughtful about the process here, especially with all the negative comments that are going to probably come out of this, and just really support projects like this within the city. This is the missing middle that creates the fabric of the city and allows for more family homes to come in to the city in general. So highly support this and appreciate your time and your service within the city. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the only card I have. If there's anyone else who would like to speak on this, you can step up to the microphone. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name.
Thanks for having us. My name is Jonathan Metzman. I'm also here with my partner, Alyssa Johnson. We live at 1999 South 500 East, which is directly across the street from this proposed development. First of all, we're very pleased that we're developing this vacant lot. We were there when the church burned down, and it's been a kind of an eyesore, and it's great that we're bringing more housing into the area. However, we still respectfully oppose the amendment from going from a single family to a moderate density multifamily resident. Our main concern is mostly around what was addressed earlier, as well as a couple other concerns. First, density, parking, height, sunlight, affordability, and neighborhood compatibility are kind of our list here. We weren't here in the initial meeting, but we just kind of want to give some more additional comments from anything that was not addressed. We are pleased that we're reducing from a 24 to a 22 bedroom number. However, I did see that we're going from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom. So I'm not sure if that's exactly addressing the density concerns. And along the density concerns, I still haven't seen a very comprehensive plan for how we will address overflow parking. Currently, parking on the street is very limited. We have a shared driveway on our whole street. So every house has 2 houses with 1 shared driveway. Each of those driveways can roughly accommodate 1.5 cars, depending on how we kind of maneuver. On 500 East, we don't have any street parking, so that means overflow parking needs to go to the surrounding streets. These are all single lane streets with stop signs, so if we're increasing the density by 8 to 9x, I haven't seen any comprehensive plan for how we will address this overflow. So one thing we ask for the city is to evaluate how are we going to accommodate for this rise in parking. This is not only...
That's time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd love to see that. Thanks.
Thank you.
And along with that, I mean, safety is also...
That's time. That's your time. You have 2 minutes, sorry.
Okay, sure. Also, we'd like to see...
You're done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'll just finish up here. Like he said, my name is Alyssa Johnson. We live in the unit right across the street, and I'm his partner. We went around the neighborhood, and we would really like you to, I guess, take note that everyone that we talked to, aside from one person, had a lot of reservations about these townhomes, specifically about the density.
Can you please get closer to the mic? Sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Going from a 24 to a 22 unit with 4 bedrooms means a significant increase in cars. Going from 32 feet to 30 feet doesn't really seem like enough for us. I think those are my 2 main concerns. I mean, those are addressing the 2 amendments that are being proposed here. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Garo Topchian. I'm at 447 Hollywood. And this whole thing looks great on paper. I mean, they've crossed all, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. I mean, this thing, hey. But come on, guys, reality. People live here. 5th East is a bike lane. You can't park on 5th East. Great, they reduced it from 24 to 22. But really, I mean, how many people are going to live in these units? I mean, we went from 7 single families to 22 townhouses in a friggin' neighborhood that's already jam-packed. I know you guys got a job to do. Cassie, I know you got a job to do. We got to push this through for tax dollars. Great. I'm glad people are here cheering this thing on, but I know you guys don't live in the neighborhood, but reality is the neighborhood. Think about that. I know developers, I know all this BS, but people live here, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? Sorry, no, sorry. We don't answer, we don't do back and forth, and if you didn't have it during your times, sorry. finished and sat down. So, yeah, sorry. Did you want to speak? Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Tomlinson. I live at 443 East Hollywood, and I'm just here in opposition of this development. First of all, I understand and I support the city's goal of increasing the housing supply and providing more opportunities for specifically medium density housing. Salt Lake City is growing, and I think it's an important goal for the mayor and for the city. I think my main point of contention with this is I haven't really seen sufficient evidence that this specific plot needs to be rezoned to medium density. There are numerous open and for sale plots along 21st East that are more along major transit corridors. They have more local business opportunities. They're just more suitable to a developer if their main goal is not a financial goal at the end of the day. I think this kind of just detracts from the neighborhood in general. And yeah, so I think my main point is that there's so many better plots for the city to guide a developer towards rezoning rather than this one that's in the middle of a small single family neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. If you have a moment, if you'd like to respond to any of those, I think they mainly start centered around density and parking, or we can move into our discussion if not.
There was one clarification, just that we had always anticipated the 4 bedrooms. I wasn't sure where the confusion was. So, and then again, we have the 2.36 stalls per unit, which is well above what's existing in the neighborhood. But I appreciate the feedback, and I'm happy to stay after and talk with residents and answer any clarifying questions too. So,
awesome.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Then we will bring it back to the committee for discussion.
Would the park be publicly accessible?
At this point, we aren't anticipating it would be public. The main reason is just because these future homeowners will end up having to cover the cost of the park with their HOA fees. It's something that we've discussed internally about, but no, at this point, it's not anticipated to be public.
So it would be, the entire facility would be fenced off?
No.
Oh.
There will be connections, and most likely residents in the surrounding neighborhood will be able to use it. It's just, we're not gonna be able to we aren't taking away the rights of the future homeowners from prohibiting people, essentially. But there will be access, there will be pathways, it's not gonna be fenced.
All right, so it's
privately owned, but but there's no public easement recorded or anything like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But there would be nothing
preventing
people from
Correct.
entering the park other than like law, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. But in the future, the HOA could theoretically choose to step up enforcement.
Yes.
That's what
exactly.
you're saying. I
Thank
appreciate
you. You
the
worded it
clarification.
much better than I did.
Yes.
So.
What, on that west side where it is a smaller setback?
Yep.
What is that distance?
It's a little over 10 feet.
Okay.
I wanted to thank the people who've made comments on this. And it sounds like the project has changed based on comments that the neighborhood has made. And I'm particularly note the conditions. Will you pull those up, the conditions for this rezone? If it's rezoned, there are all of these rules that usually properties with RMF 35 don't necessarily have to follow, but this property will have to, like forever, whoever owns this will have to. So I appreciate the input that's come from the residents, the time that you spent to gather signatures, to talk to your neighbors, to express the things that you were worried about, and hopefully some of those things have been addressed. I also want to note that in the comments that we heard tonight, or the comments that I read, things said like, this is a residential neighborhood. People live here. And what I want to say is people will live in these houses. That's who will live there. Residents will live there. There'll be neighbors that live in those houses, in those townhomes. There were some comments like, I'd rather see some more desirable type of houses. And what I'm telling you is that some people desire a row house. Some people want a 4-bedroom row house to live in. And I'm hopeful. I think that in the end it will be a good, if it's rezoned and built the way that it's agreed to, I'm hopeful that it will be a good addition to your neighborhood and will be filled with people who are residents, who are neighbors, who will also contribute to your community. But I know that changing things is hard, and that building was beautiful, and it's very different from what's going to be there in the future, but it's just going to be. Nobody's rebuilding a big church on that lot. So I'm hopeful that these additional units will make a good part of your neighborhood too. I appreciate the time that you've spent, and also realize that we aren't the last ones to hear this project. It also goes to the Salt Lake City Council. So there's, you have a Salt Lake City Council member that you can talk to, and you can continue to make comments and talk to the landowner. And I encourage you to do that. But I think remember that people who live in houses that are row houses are also people. Thanks, guys.
Yes, I also appreciate the comments that were provided, and I appreciate the developer making some changes based on those comments. On visiting this site, I think it just struck me how close it really is to 21st South, and that it kind of is the perfect place for kind of a downgrade to the single-family neighborhood. I am curious, do we know how tall that meeting house was? Okay. I just noticed comments about like looming and light being blocked, and I was curious how tall the previous structure was. I also appreciate how close it is to transit. Well, this project, I mean, it's hard to imagine any project providing more parking than this, honestly. If a just multifamily apartment building were there, I can't imagine each apartment would have 2 parking spaces, let alone additional for guests. So I think that's really a positive, but also a positive is how close the S line is, and the bus stops along 21st South.
And yeah, I would just note that this is an intersection between 2 transit lines. It's an intersection between 205 and 21. That's north-south access and east-west access, rapid access to downtown. Currently, Route 205 is a 30-minute service in the plan. It's a 15-minute service. When that actually happens is an open question, but in theory. And I think that in terms of proximity to transit and in terms of the ability to live a lifestyle that's lower car or no car, there's a real opportunity here for community members. I am a little bit curious, and this is like me being the technical policy wonk that I am. First of all, do you know, under the expanded housing options that is currently like being proposed and evaluated in front of the commission, and obviously we haven't passed that, it's not legal, I know that. But do you know if this kind of project would be in the realm of permissible under that expanded housing options ordinance?
As currently drafted, I believe each R1 5,000 lot could have up to 3. Is that right? 4 dwelling units.
Okay.
And up to 30 feet in height. So if we did the math and broke these lots into, do you know how much square footage there is?
About 44,000 square feet.
So that'd be the same. So that would be about the same number of dwellings under that, because it's based on minimum lot area, and that project drops it down to 2,000.
Okay.
So,
yes. Thank you. And then, I'm just gonna like raise my perpetual bugaboo, like spot zoning and not wanting to just do like a skip. Because I like it, it's incredibly close to 21st South, and I think that this is the natural next spot for density. My concern is like, are we doing it one parcel at a time? Why are we doing it one parcel at a time rather than evaluating? I mean, obviously, an applicant asked, we have to consider that. But I would once again put on the record my concern over the fact that rather than like comprehensively saying this is right close to 21st South, it's right close to transit, maybe we should evaluate expanding further north the MU zoning or an RMF, moderate density zoning, instead saying like, okay, this particular parcel is changing, this particular plan is changing. I don't think that's enough for me to say no to an opportunity to add more neighbors. But in the future, it's just something that I would like to see less of. If this development pressure is in this area, we should really be evaluating holistically how to accommodate it most effectively.
I'll just add that the central community plan is being updated.
Yeah.
Y'all were briefed last commission
Yes.
meeting. This neighborhood is part of the central community plan, and those new, designations for future land use will be identified in that draft.
Okay.
So that's coming.
Because we just saw the existing conditions. We didn't see
Correct.
potential designations.
Yeah. So they're in public engagement for existing conditions, and then they'll draft future
Okay.
land use map and those policy chapters in the future. So like, while yes, this is just one property,
Yeah.
we're updating that community plan. So
So the applicant's biggest sin is that they're early. Potentially, I don't know that. I haven't seen the actual draft. I haven't actually, we haven't actually passed MU or expanded out housing options. But that's certainly, both of these things could accommodate that. And ultimately, we're getting quite a bit out of this in terms of privately owned public space, and then, or public, not public space, privately owned green space, and then lots of opportunities. I mean, I think that there's too much parking, right? 2.3 or 2.6? 2.63? Yeah, that's for something that's 100 feet or 500 feet from a high-frequency transit stop and half a mile from a streetcar line. That seems high. But I understand that that is the desire of the community, and certainly if that helps resolve some concerns, I think that that's a worthwhile, perhaps, compromise right now in this moment. So I'm not going to make a motion on this, but I would certainly, if somebody else wishes to make a motion.
I can make a motion. Yeah. Based on the information presented.
I'm sorry,
we're-
public
we're-
comment has been closed.
Yeah.
But your agenda said dinner started at 5:30. I'm here representing the Brewell Community Council. So your agenda's confusing.
Does it say that?
the
Figured, oh, you're having dinner at 5:30 and the meeting would start about 6.
the meeting starts at 5:30 and the public hearing for this item is closed.
The agenda says,
From the community council, this is.
Thank you. This isn't a back and forth thing. I'm sorry, guys. We open the public comment and you have your chance to speak, and then we discuss. And
Is it?
The public hearing is closed, and I'm looking at the agenda, and it shows dinner at 5 o'clock, and the meeting starts at 5:30.
thank you.
Is it, sorry, quick question. Is it within the scope of our authority to reopen public comment?
yes, you have that ability to do that. It would take a motion and a second and a vote to do that. But you do have that right.
I move to reopen public comment for 5 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and vote.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Liberty Wells understands the need for increased gentle density in our neighborhoods. The council even created a statement on density and the types of housing options we want to see in our community. That document was created in response to the spot rezoning of the Sears Mansion property. That rezoning went against a whole list of guidelines provided by the planning department. It also went against all of the neighbors and the community council that all spoke out in opposition and recommended a duplex, triplex, fourplex, or a cottage court, all true missing middle housing forms that are identified as house-scale buildings that fit seamlessly into existing residential zone neighborhoods. Sorry, I ran up the stairs. We hear developers throwing out missing middle housing on almost every development, all while their plans violate the key hallmarks of that housing form. Daniel Paralek, the architect who famously coined the term missing middle housing, strenuously opposes piecemeal spot rezoning in established residential neighborhoods. He argues that evaluating multi-unit projects on a case-by-case basis through spot rezoning creates unnecessary community friction, drives up developer risk, and fails to solve the broader housing crisis. When a single lot is spot rezoned for higher density, developers often maximize the site with boxy, out-of-scale units that clash with the neighborhood's existing character. The state of Utah thought enough of Paralek and his firm that they were engaged to create a whole missing middle resource guide for cities across the state. It's a good read, I recommend it. What Castlewood is proposing isn't included in this guide, and I would sincerely ask for the council that this petition for a spot rezone be denied. The development on the corner of 4th East and Cleveland didn't require a rezone, and yet it added density and also maintained the scale of the existing community. Please send Castlewood back to the drawing board and keep the existing zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then we'll close the public comment and bring it back to the committee.
Thank you for that comment. Based on the information presented in this discussion, I move that the commission recommend that the city council adopt this position with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
All right, that passes. You want to make this one has two, right?
Based on the information presented in this discussion, I move that the commission recommend that the city council adopt this position with the conditions listed in the staff report. This is for PLN PCM 2026-00331 general plan amendment.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
All right, that passes as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move along to our next agenda item, which is the text amendment for the definition of family.
Sorry, the thing is loading, as you can see. exited out of it, but that when I pressed the exit, it started doing that. No worries. I saw it like exit out of like something. Yeah, that.
We may need 5 minutes. I'm not sure what's going on with this.
Okay, we'll go ahead and break for 5 minutes as we figure out the technical difficulty.
Sorry.
No? We're back.
Hi, my name is Madison Blodgett, and I will be presenting a zoning text amendment to amend the definition of family in the city code. So the request is for a zoning text amendment, and this was initiated by the city council to modify the definition of family, which is in 21A 62040, which is the definitions chapter, as well as some other related sections of code. And the staff recommendation is to forward a positive recommendation to City Council to approve the proposal. So the proposal details, so the current definition is integral part of the code, and it determines the type of dwelling, such as like single family, two family, multifamily, and then how many people can occupy a dwelling as well as who. The definition does not apply to some types of dwellings, such as like fraternities, sororities, group homes, and assisted living facilities. Those are separate uses with their own definitions and are not affected by this. And then the definition is broken up into 3 parts that establish occupancy based on the relationship of the occupants. So under the current code, a family can consist of an unlimited number of related people, so and related means by blood, marriage, or adoption, up to 3 unrelated people or 2 unrelated people and their children. Or is the key part in this definition, as it prevents the mixing of unrelated and related people unless it's the 2 unrelated adults and their children. And then finally, the current definition is used in Title 12, which is about vehicles and traffic, and it specifically is used in the neighborhood parking limitations, defining household, which is used to define excess vehicles, which excess vehicles are defined as more than 1 registered vehicle per licensed driver in a household. So in this instance, a household is defined the same as family, and then is used to determine if the household has excessive vehicles. So this current definition presents some challenges, which is one of the reasons why we're updating it. The first challenge being that it is difficult to enforce because it requires proving relationships. It's also inequitable and treats households differently based on their relation. It does not allow mixing of related and unrelated people, restricts living arrangements and reduces housing options, leads to underutilized housing and higher per person housing costs, as well as creates barriers to ownership and affordability. So the proposed changes to address these challenges are to create one uniform rule for all households by removing the relationship-based restrictions on the number of people considered a family, basically treating functional families or chosen families the same as traditional families. And this will not apply to sororities, fraternities, boarding houses as well, just to reiterate. And since relationship will no longer establish occupancy, occupancy will be based on the number of bedrooms in a dwelling. And then finally, the proposed changes will delete the definition of household and excess vehicle in Title 12. So as part of the work to draft this amendment, staff looked at other cities and what they're doing as far as like what their definition of family is. And as you can see in this map, there's several states that have done like statewide like preventing cities from limiting the number of unrelated people, as well as some specific cities. And one local example is Draper. So this is comparing the current code with the proposed. So as you can see, the current definition has like the three pieces that you have to fit into one of. But the proposed code is just going to be one or more persons living together in a dwelling, and then the occupancy limits will be no more than 2 people per bedroom, plus 1 additional person for the entire unit. We also have language to clarify studios, since those technically don't have a bedroom, and that will be no more than 2 people for the entire studio or efficiency unit. And then all bedrooms must meet the building code's definition of a bedroom, which includes minimum qualifications for like floor area, the dimensions, ceiling height, egress, etc. So there are several benefits to making this change. It creates flexibility in living arrangements, increases housing options, availability, and access, reduces barriers for all those who want to live in the city, and that's, for renters, homeowners, as well as aging in place. And then activates existing underutilized housing options and naturally occurring affordable housing. The proposal also furthers a lot of the city's goals and policies. Specifically Plan Salt Lake, Housing SLC, and Thriving in Place. Flexible living arrangements, increased housing options, activating housing, reducing barriers, and preserving naturally affordable units are all supported by, support the goals found in these citywide policies. So for a little background and some context, in April 2025, the City Council adopted a legislative intent to consider updating the definition of family in the zoning code. In November of 2025, planning staff provided an informational transmittal to council with some options for them to provide direction on how to proceed. These options included maintain the existing definition, but increase the number of unrelated people to 5, increase the number of unrelated people to 5 and allow households to include a combination of family types, simplify the definition by removing occupant limits and treat occupants the same regardless of a relationship. And council favored option 3, but with consideration to include restrictions based on the number of bedrooms. And so staff used that to proceed with this amendment. So the current definition in the zoning code has been there at least since 1995, but the term family has been in the zoning code since its first adoption in 1927. And over the last century, it's changed. So when it first was in the zoning code, it allowed any number of individuals living together with the only qualifier being that they're doing the cooking on premise. It also remained basically the same in 1949. The only extra thing is that they called out it had to be separate from like another group or a family. And it wasn't until 1955 that the definition included a relationship qualifier. And this might be due to some of the societal shifts at the time, as well as like growing suburbs. And then the most recent definition before the current was in 1978. And this is most similar to the current definition, except it doesn't have the inclusion of 2 adults and their children. In addition to some of the other challenges discussed, one of the biggest challenges is enforcement. So enforcing this definition is difficult because it requires proving the relationships of occupants. And the burden of proof when it comes to like enforcement is on the city or the person making the complaint. And that would require, the city somehow getting documentation from the occupants to prove that they're related, which the city cannot do and that, and occupants are not required to do. So a lot of times these complaints end up closing because there's no way to prove them. And the same thing applies to the household and excess vehicle. And this one is actually completely impossible to enforce because since excess vehicles are going to be based upon the number of vehicles registered to a house, it requires having registration information. But when parking enforcement goes out and does response to any sort of complaint, they don't have access to that information, so they can't enforce it anyway. And then additionally, these impacts occur regardless of the occupant's relationship. And so in trying to enforce relationship instead of actual standards that apply to the possible issues, it's not actually a good way to enforce. So throughout the process, we received some public comment that raised some concerns about the impacts of this proposal. So I wanted to go through and address some of those concerns. So the number one concern raised by the public was parking, specifically the availability of on-street parking. So unrelated households are not the only ones that contribute to street parking. People use street parking regardless of the relationship. A household made up of 2 married adults and their 2 children of driving age might park 2 of their vehicles on the street, and a household of 4 unrelated roommates may do the same. Each household then creates the same impact of street parking regardless of their relationships. Limiting the number of unrelated people in a dwelling will not address the actual parking issue. There are better enforcement tools that already exist. So in the zoning code, there is a provision that requires all off-street parking be used for parking. So for example, if there's a household that has like a 2-car garage, but they use that garage for storage, this provision would actually prevent them from doing that because they need to use that that garage for parking. Additionally, there are other parking enforcement tools that are not in the zoning codes, such as the 48-hour limit for street parking, which basically prevents someone from storing a vehicle on the street for more than 48 hours. There's also time-limited parking in certain zones, like 2-hour parking zones, and then residential permit parking. And these are much better ways to try to address parking concerns instead of regulating the relation of people. The next concern that was brought up was nuisances, specifically nuisances like noise, garbage, using the front yard for parking, using the front yard to store junk, poorly maintained landscaping, as well as, concerns that the more people that are not related living together will lead to, more vandalism or property destruction. And specifically, a lot of these concerns are around the University of Utah. So first, this proposal does not actually remove occupancy. It'll still limit the number of bedrooms, but it would also apply to both, to all households, not just unrelated households. And these nuisances are not exclusive to unrelated households. As in the case of parking, the city already has enforcement tools that are much better and able to be documented to address nuisances, specifically like a noise ordinance, garbage containment requirements, landscaping/yard maintenance standards, and then also laws that prevent vandalism and other sort of crimes. Another concern raised was that landlords will try to put as many people as possible into a dwelling, leading to overcrowding and life safety concerns. So first is Overcrowding is a concern regardless of the relationship of the occupants, and this proposal actually sets occupancy limits for all households, where the current definition only has a cap for unrelated households. Additionally, all housing is subject to building code occupancy, as well as like space standards for like a bedroom. And while the proposed occupancy limits are generally consistent with the building code, they do establish a cap on the number of occupants per bedroom. Under the space and occupancy standards in Title 18, no such cap exists, provided an additional 50 square feet for each additional occupant beyond 2 is provided. So this actually is more restrictive than like what building code occupancy standards are. The next concern, I guess the last concern, was exploitative landlord practices and then the loss of single-family dwellings / single-family dwellings turning into multifamily. While removing unrelated occupancy limits will not actually allow landlords to maximize profit, because this will allow, or this still has a occupancy limit, and it does not change land use. So multifamily is not going to be allowed in a zone that doesn't allow multifamily. The density will not change based upon the number of people living in a house. The density is going to be based upon the number of units in an acre. So this is not going to change any sort of land use, and this is also not going to end up with like single-family homes becoming multifamily or turning into boarding houses, fraternities, or sororities. Again, those are all separate uses. And the aim of this is to actually reduce housing costs instead of landlords using it to make more money. And so finally, the recommendation is based on the information discussed. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council.
Sweet, thank you. Do we have any quick clarifying questions for public comment?
Other than the broad sort of envelope restrictions, does the single-family zoning district have any restrictions on the number of bedrooms that can be built inside a house?
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you.
Did a previous version of this language not include the replacement occupancy limit? Because there were a lot of comments that were like, occupancy is now unlimited, but.
Yeah, so the initial draft, when we first started the process, just referenced building code for occupancy, but as we went through the process more, we found that building code, while it does establish occupancy, there really is no cap, which, because the building code allows 2 people per bedroom, plus an additional person for every 50 square feet of bedroom. And so technically you could have a really large bedroom and have, 5-6 people that could be allowed in just a single bedroom. This still allows 2 per bedroom, but caps it at only 1 additional person for the entire dwelling.
Okay. And then I wonder if there's an enforcement action taken, whether occupancy is based on how many unrelated people live in a house, or whether it's based on, if the definition changes of occupancy, how many people per bedroom kind of thing. Does the enforcement action go to the tenants, or does it go to the owner?
That's a great
The owner's ultimately responsible, so that's who the enforcement is aimed at.
So you would ask them then, how many people? Well, so if you apply for an apartment or you rent a home, it's a 2-bedroom home, do you have to promise to the landlord that there's only 5 of us or something like that? Is that a normal thing?
Well, that would be an issue, a discussion between the people renting or leasing the space and the owner. The city is not, we don't collect that information.
So when the city goes to enforce, if the neighbor says 7 people live in that house that has 2 bedrooms, then how does that enforcement happen?
Well, we generally know because of assessment data and building permit data how many bedrooms are in every dwelling. So we can look that up and then kind of verify that part. There's still a gap that's hard to enforce with this proposal. It's just not as difficult as proving the relationship of people. So that part will rely on the property owner disclosing the information.
So if I rent a house right now that has 2 bedrooms and there are 5 of us when we move in, but then I have another baby, so there's 6 of us, and now we're exceeding occupancy, do I have to move? Do I have to tell the person I'm renting the house from that there's another occupant now or something? Like I don't know how that works. I haven't.
That's between like you and the landlords.
But it seems like it's also between you and the neighborhood if you're going to say you live next to a house that has 2 bedrooms and 5 people can live there. Like it's also between you and the neighbors that are complaining, because enforcement would still be based on complaints, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to think more about that. So that's the end of my question. Thank you.
All right, then we will move on to public comment. Oh, okay. So if you would like to speak, you can step up to that mic and you'll have 2 minutes, and please state your name at the beginning. And we'll start with Brian Burnett.
Thank you. My name is Brian Burnett. I'm Vice Chair of the Foothill Sunnyside Community Council, and we request 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for serving in this capacity. I know it's a sacrifice for you and for the planning staff. I know these are difficult issues and they're challenging, and I appreciate your service. The Foothill Sunnyside Community Council has reviewed the proposed changes to the definition of family in the Salt Lake City zoning code. We have serious concerns with this proposal. The proposal modifies the definition of family and removes the restriction on the number of persons living together as a single housekeeping unit in a dwelling unit. The Foothill Sunnyside Community Council area is immediately south across the street from the University of Utah student housing. We've already seen some of the effects of this on our neighborhood. The proposed amendment removes most occupant limits and relationship distinctions. Although we recognize that this can be challenging to enforce, these restrictions make some sense in certain contexts. For example, I know this is limited by bedrooms. Let's assume that an investor acquires a home in our neighborhood with 6 bedrooms. He rents the house to 12 college students plus 1, 2 for each bedroom plus 1, 13. This results in increased parking, traffic, noise, and other concerns. Those people will likely invite other college students over for parties. This situation is very much a concern for a family neighborhood. If this is allowed to happen, we fear that our neighborhood will be significantly changed. We doubt Salt Lake City has the enforcement capabilities and political will to mitigate these concerns. We fear that the result of this zoning change will result in families moving from our neighborhood. And our goal is to ask people to come to our neighborhood, and young families are currently moving into our neighborhood. It was mentioned that this zoning provision is difficult to enforce. The same can be said about many of Salt Lake City ordinances. Even this one still has a bedroom restriction, so you have to figure out how many bedrooms they have, how many people are there. It's still an enforcement challenge. And I think back to a time on short-term rentals. I looked at an administrative decision. There were 40 pages in the administrative record trying to enforce a short-term rental. A lot of ordinances are difficult to enforce. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have them. And I think you ought to ask yourselves, is this a situation you'd like to have move in next to your home? We would encourage Salt Lake City to retain the limit as set forth in the current, or certainly further restrict it. This is, as I discussed, that has unintended consequences. The public is busy. It's hard to get them engaged in every issue. And I know that it's, despite several open houses or whatever, it's hard to get everybody in line on this. But the public does want to be consulted on these things. And I've tried to talk to people in my neighborhood, and Without exception, everybody has opposed this. And although I know you do not answer directly to the public, your city council members that you make this recommendation do. And therefore, I think it's important you consider how the voters of this area perceive this, because I think that overwhelmingly there's opposition to this change. If you don't think that there are consequences for not having people involved in decisions, I would refer you to some of the election results that just happened regarding Stuart Adams, the Senate president, or the 2 county commissioners in Box Elder County who voted for the data center, both not elected. So I think it's folly to just ignore the voters' concerns on this. And it reminds me, I grew up in Logan. The area west of Utah State University used to be a nice housing area with families. That is not the case now. Mostly rental, split up, absentee landlords. I have a friend who still lives there. He was friends with 11 widows. 10 of those widows have passed away and their estates have sold the homes. In every single instance, it's an investor who bought the home and is packing it with students. I had a partner in my old firm who was investing in housing in other cities he's never even been to and never intends to be to. What's his primary concern? Return on investment, not maintaining the property, not making sure the tenants are complying with the law. I think this is just really going to be hard, still hard to enforce. And I think the unintended consequence is, for us, living next to the University of Utah, is in a generation, we will be like that area just west of Utah State University, not a family housing area anymore. If you want to encourage families to come and move to Salt Lake City, my recommendation is you modify this proposal. Again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kimball Young.
Hi there. I too want to thank you for your service. I had the opportunity to be on the Planning Commission in the 1990s, so I know how difficult things are. I too live in the Foothill Sunnyside area. I happen to be the chairman of our community council and just would like to reaffirm, restate, add to what Brian has said in terms of the public response in our area, and remind you that District 6 and Foothill Sunnyside is right in the heart of District 6. It's the only one of our 7 city council areas that has a majority of owner-occupied dwellings, about 65 to 68% in District 6, whereas the rest of the city taking in District 6 is 55% rental. And what this matter does is incentivize more rental properties. And we have a pretty dynamic area in the Foothill Sunnyside community. We have a lot of families, and we'd like to see more families living in our area as owner-occupied, in the owner-occupied dwellings. And I think that what's being proposed here works against that, and I'm hoping that we can keep the matter the way it is, which would be the least of the 2 approaches in terms of rental development and furtherance. Thanks for your attention to the matter.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Nope. Okay, I will go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to us for discussion.
There's a few things I want to say about public comment. There's like 80 pages in this report that are public comment. And a lot of them were like, I don't like this idea because our neighborhood's already ruined by having students next to us, and it could only get worse. And I think that a lot of those comments, like a lot of times when we hear public comments, it's somebody complaining about the current situation. Like, we haven't changed anything it is, you already don't like your neighbors, right? So that's kind of like a lot of those comments are about that, or fear of like what could possibly change. And I think a lot of what goes into whether, when I talk to somebody about an issue, whether they agree with me or not is kind of based on how I present it. So there are, like when this was originally presented, like we're gonna get rid of, you can have as many unrelated people as you want. That doesn't sound good, but then you realize on the other side, there is an occupancy limit in another way that maybe makes better sense in a lot of ways. That sounds okay. So if you ask me about it this way, it's not that great. If you ask me about it this way, okay, I could probably get behind that. But there is a lot of public comment on this. There's definitely a trade-off in being the capital city and having a big university, at least one big public university and smaller private university, because we have students living here. And on the whole, I would say our city is better because we have the University of Utah, because we have students living here, than it is like the hardships that may come because young people living together are different than young people and older people living together, or, you know, newly independent younger people are different. But I think on the whole, our city is served well by having the University of Utah here. That's how you get university professors for neighbors. You have to have students if you want to have professors for neighbors too. And if you want families to live here and people with children, they have to go from being children themselves to being young people, to being students at a college, or being young professionals, or being independent but also having roommates for a while, and then they go and be parents or go and be grown-ups that make our neighborhood great. So we can't just not have students, and we don't want to just not have students. I also hate to just disparage renters, because people who don't own their home and rent it, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. That's just how some people choose to house themselves, and renters are not ruining anything. I think sometimes people who own homes and don't care for them, don't give the people who live there a lawnmower, they don't have, you know, sprinkler systems, like those yards aren't going to look good, and that's more the fault probably of the person who owns the house. At any rate, my concern, more than there being like too many people to live in a house based on these occupancy limits, is I wonder if if the idea of adults taking care of children that they're responsible for might be sized out of these rules. Like, that really is my concern. I can see somebody with a lot of children that has 3 bedrooms, because there's one for the grown-ups and one for these kids and one for these kids. Like, you have another kid, and 3 kids could fit in this room, and 3 kids could fit in this room. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of my concern, and I don't know that it seems like enforcement is kind of hard in that way too, but maybe if they're not causing problems for the neighbors, nobody will complain and nobody will ever know. But I'm happy to see the definition that we have right now go away, because I think that it's not serving us. And there are already enforcement problems based on that definition. And every single time we talk about rules, there's somebody that's complaining about enforcement, like rightfully so. If these things are happening, they're no good. Like, somebody come and give a ticket to somebody, tell somebody people cannot live there, that many people. At any rate, that's the way I feel about it. I wonder if this has every single kink worked out, because it seems like there'd be some cases that would also maybe not be fair, but I like this approach better than the one that we have now. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was insightful. I appreciate, I think, I agree that I have a concern about sizing families out. And also, I worry that the size created for studios is too small. It actually reduces the amount of residents that can be in a studio. And that's going to both potentially size out families who can only afford that, and it's also going to size out, like, I don't know, a polycule of 3. And probably you shouldn't have a polycule of 5 in a studio apartment, but, you know, I think a group of 3 adults living together in a studio apartment is probably fine. I think Happy Pride Month, everybody. Family extends well beyond the definitions that we can give it, and it just extends beyond any definition that we can give it. And I think that there is a great deal of value in allowing all of those definitions to flourish by instead really talking about what we are doing, the problems that we are trying to prevent, rather than trying to like describe a specific boundary. I worry a little bit about the lack of vehicle restrictions, or the complete removal of vehicle restrictions. You mentioned that our enforcement officers are not able to look up titles. Is that state regulation that prohibits us from having that access to that information? And if so, do we want to keep it on the books so that if the state regulation changes, we can potentially in the future enforce against people who have way too many cars?
So that information came straight from compliance, such as the city's parking enforcement division.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure about the state law thing, but they do not have access to registration. Like, there's not a way for them to get access to it. And so whether it's a state law or not, it's just not something the city has access to, so there's no way to actually enforce it.
So it is a state regulation. It's an administrative rule that's adopted by the Department of Public Safety that limits access to vehicle registration information to local governments outside of basically police activity. So there has to be a valid reason, and they've said that this type of thing is not a valid reason to access that. So they will not give access to the city for that purpose.
But that's not even like a legislation. It wouldn't even be necessarily the state legislature. That's an executive decision by an agency.
I believe the state law basically says that that access can't be used for certain things, and then gives the various departments the ability to draft administrative rules on how to basically enforce that.
Yeah.
So, and that's been handed down, and it's been that way for years. Right. So I would not anticipate, there's all kinds of privacy issues with that kind of stuff, it being used incorrectly. You know, the people that do parking enforcement and our civil enforcement team don't go through the same level of training that police officers do as far as, you know, how they do their investigations and things like that. So I would be shocked if that data actually ever gets freed up to be used for that purpose.
Yeah.
I think it would probably revert to being more restrictive than less restrictive. So
I mean, I do think that there might be ways to do it anonymized,
yeah,
right?
And if they, you know, if the state law does change, we can change our ordinance.
Yeah. Okay. And there would be no other meaningful way to enforce
No,
this.
because we'd have no way of knowing who those vehicles belong to.
Other than literally like staking out the
Well, even then, right? Like a vehicle may be in a parent's name that their adult child drives. Maybe registered at a different house. It may be, you know, there's so many things that it just is challenging.
And there would be no way to enforce on what actually is happening with that vehicle.
That's right. Yeah. And the other reality too is that even though we have off-street parking requirements, there's nothing that says you have to park in your driveway or your garage.
Yes.
You have to keep it clear and available for parking. But people are going to choose to park wherever they feel is the most appropriate for them.
Yeah.
And whether they park a boat in their garage, park a car in their driveway, and 3 cars on the street,
Yeah.
they're fully operating legally under all rules.
Yes.
As long as they're parked legally. And so that rule should apply evenly regardless of who lives in what dwelling.
Yes. I mean, I guess I just asked because I think that the public comments both here and in the previous matter that came before the commission demonstrated what I think is like the real core problem with cars, which is that it makes car ownership makes us all fight each other, right? Suddenly we're no longer thinking of each other as neighbors. We're no longer thinking of each other as people who need to take care of each other. We're no longer thinking about the students in the house next to us as like learners who can potentially provide joy and vibrancy to the neighborhood. Instead, we're thinking about them as people who are competing for car space. And I think that is deeply problematic. And if we can do things that make it harder for people to own 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 cars and like get into this mindset of like, I am in my little fiefdom of my automobile and can do whatever I want, that would be beneficial. So that's why I am hesitant to say, let's take this off the books entirely. But I hear that it's basically impossible to enforce, and it probably is it's problematic to have a completely unenforceable code item. I do wonder if there might be an opportunity to evaluate ways that we could, but probably the best way to do that is just to charge for on-street parking, and I'm not sure that that's really politically viable. What else? Yeah.
What about residential permit zones? How do those work? Are households limited to a certain number of those permits that they can have, or?
So it depends. So the residential permit parking, one, it applies to all residents, right? So
Okay.
whether you're renting or owning, you can get those.
Okay,
Some areas do have a limit on the number per residence that will be granted. And so that's one way to limit that. That's all managed through the transportation division. So they go out, they do a study, and they come up with some proposal for that before it's created. But transportation would do that based on essentially on-street parking use, where they go out and actually document how many on-street parking spaces are available and how it's used at different times throughout the day, different days of the week, to give them an idea of how big the demand actually is. So
okay,
That's how they currently calculate it?
yes.
Okay.
And there is, like, this is not the first time the question of like parking enforcement zones has come up in relation to the broader zoning questions. I assume that there is no way that that can ever be placed even in proximity to the remit of the zoning code or the planning commission and the city, or I mean, I guess the city council can choose to change the ordinance, but we can't make any recommendations to them on that course. Is that correct?
Probably not, yeah, because it's outside of your scope. Yeah. I'll add that around the universities is where those exist.
Yes.
And so even with those, there's still the parking complaints and things like that. So
Yes.
they're not they don't solve the problem. They help manage it better, but they don't solve the perception of neighbors, competing for on-street parking.
Yeah. It's just, it would be nice to send this over with a package for like the council to evaluate. So I guess I'm putting that on the record. I don't think we can move to it, but I think that if the council is listening, I think it might make sense to evaluate better ways to restrict parking in light of this. That said, I do wonder, can we make recommendations to shift some of the language? So for example, saying like that the cap doesn't apply to children under a certain age, or that increasing the number of people who can live in a studio by 1. Would that be something that we could move to do here, or would we need to table it and wait for the staff to revise?
That's up to you.
Okay.
You can come up with something. I mean, like writing in an exception for households with children is pretty easy. Just add that wording to the end, right? Similar with the studio size. If you want to change the number, you can change the number by motion.
Can I make a comment about the studio question? So under building code, the minimum size for studio is like 200 feet. And so the reason why we put the cap at 2 is because you could have a studio that's only 200 square feet and have 2 people in it, which is small. So it's trying to account for studios of all sizes, including like the smallest possible.
But the building code limit is 2 people plus 1 person per 50 square feet?
Yes. And so actually building codes rules for efficiency unit studios is different. It is the 2 for like a minimum unit plus an additional person for every 100 square feet.
Okay. I mean, I would, and that, because that is incorporated in under state law, that is still enforceable no matter what.
Yes.
Interesting. And what is the enforcement action, especially for owner occupied units? Like if there is an owner occupant, say 2 bedrooms, 4 kids and 2 adults, under the current code, if a neighbor makes a complaint, what would be the process by which the city would enforce this ordinance?
This is that gap I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like this creates the same situation just with a related household as the unrelated. And that would be one reason why you may want to consider writing in an exclusion for children.
Right. I guess
basically the information would have to be volunteered to us. If it was owners, we probably more than likely could not do anything.
Okay. So not even a fine or a fee or anything?
Probably not.
Okay. Because like I'm seeing like in the bill itself, it says that there's no penalty for violation. Is there a penalty?
In what?
Like in the text of the ordinance, is there a penalty for violating the ordinance? Please state the penalty reference another ordinance that prescribes the penalty here, and it's just a blank line.
Oh, that's something that's boilerplate language in the approved as to form ordinance. So there wouldn't be any additional penalty other than the zoning violations, which are already in code.
Okay, so it's just
nothing new, no additional thing. We have to put that in there because it is a potential budget impact either way.
And zoning violations are usually fines?
Yeah, they're fines, civil fines.
All right. So theoretically, like a homeowner in that situation under the current version of the text, under the future version of the text, could be fined if they had too many people.
Potentially.
Yes. But it's unlikely to happen.
That would be my...
Okay. Thank you. If other folks have thoughts, please share them. I'm going to try and workshop some language for a motion.
All right. I have a couple of things. And I'll say, just starting off, I'm inclined to be in favor of this. But there are a lot of different themes that have come up over the last few weeks, last few meetings, that I think lean towards this. We aren't looking at unintended consequences, and we're not really properly measuring externalities associated with all these policies kind of overlapping each other. And I think this conversation, people look at it as the limit on unrelated people living in the same house. And then there in the report, it was a great report, there's statements about maximizing use of a house and those sort of pieces, which leads to conversations about, we had an expanding housing options, ADU conversations. We're looking at separate living spaces, basements, those kind of things. And then we have this other conversation about how do we limit investor-held properties. And that seems like a lot, right? This is a lot of different topics, but all falls down to the one thing of, we think that increasing housing options makes housing more affordable. We're operating under that assumption, but we don't really know that. And one example of that is, with expanding housing options, you take a single family home, you add some ADUs, you expand the basement, and now a place that could have been affordable for a single family is now maximized out to have 3 other families on that property, and you can't afford it anymore. And for existing homeowners, it's great because now they have this new added value and these new revenue streams that they can use to do other things with. But if you never had a house, you don't have a house, then you don't have access to that at all. And you're subjugated to renting someone's basement if you can and dealing with the properties that are out there. And I don't know if we're measuring that. I don't know if we're looking at how these things are overlaying each other and touching each other. And when it comes to looking at, I think I will give grace to the commenters who talked about students, because that's the easy way to measure it, right? But we're not looking at the investors who step in between the students and who might exploit students or might exploit the market to have something there. And it's not all bad things. Everything's not going to become like some quasi-frat or sorority house. But with the nature of other investments we have in this community, I can't see why you wouldn't buy a 5-bedroom house and turn it into some sort of tech co-working space for 5 engineering students or something like that, to put them in a place together and start popping those up around campus. It makes a lot of sense. It's a cool thing to sort of do. You get some funding behind it, and it kind of goes. I'm sorry I put that on the record if it happens. I really apologize. But those kind of things happen with these sort of rule changes, and you don't really know who's going to exploit what, right? And so we're in this space trying to make spot changes, the same way we were with spot zoning, right? But we're making spot changes to policies that allow different doors to open, and we don't know how they're going to be exploited. We got to be sensitive to that. But when it comes down to it, like on this face, it's really hard to enforce who's related in the house. There's so many biases and prejudices that come into play, and people who file complaints. There's so many things later than that. Even with the cars, I've seen other communities here in the county. You go in a neighborhood and it's like 20 cars in front of a house. So that person is operating a Lyft or a rideshare service or Turo, and so they have 20 cars outside their house all registered to them, but they're all their business in that house and doing something like that. Police can enforce those things, but then that turns every housing issue into a criminal issue, right? And that's why you have code enforcement versus police, 2 different levels of things, and you don't want to bog down the police in doing these things and looking up these things, right? And so that's why it's a split there within the state legislature. But if you want to make these things criminal, you go down that path, but then you need more police officers and you're wasting their time doing these things, and more incidents with police, and then now police incidents go up, right? That's not something that benefits anyone. And so, said all that to say, I'm going to vote for this, but I don't know, if we're measuring the right things or we can really measure the impact of it. I think it makes sense from an enforcement standpoint. That's already difficult to do. I think that we have a lot of other tools, and I expect, the city and the council and everyone to be proactive and interactive with what's happening and be able to regulate what we can. But we have to take this step because you're moving forward and sort of making the laws on the books better, but they have to be dynamic, right? You can't sit on this. It'll have to be some other changes, and it might be in the ADU space or the investor, like who owns the property space and those sort of pieces. And I think last meeting I said get weird with things, but you have to actively monitor it to be that kind of weird. And so, good luck to all of us, and we'll move forward.
Good luck to all of us. Well, and I hope that the plans like Plan Salt Lake or Thriving in Place and those kind of things give the kind of the overarching, priorities kind of. Hopefully a lot of this stuff will work. And then also there's stuff like a couple of the zones didn't work, like nothing was built there, so like it's changing now. So I hope that we will stay dynamic. But this seems like a good step to me, and I'm hopeful that it will help and families will fit. Families of every single kind will fit. Or groups of engineers who just want to co-working. It's a good idea. Trademark.
Yeah, I think I'm generally in favor of expanding that definition of family. The one question that came to mind was whether there was any thought of just moving to using the term household instead of family, and then because I wonder if, like, in the last thing we heard a lot about family-sized housing, and I wonder if that creates a little bit of confusion. I know that's a colloquial thing, not an actual code term, but I wonder if that was considered.
So we did consider changing it to household, but the issue with that is family is used so much in the code that changing to family would just be kind of a mess to have to go through and change every time family is used in the code. I mean, specifically with single family or multifamily, that's used in a lot of sections of the zoning code, and so those would also have to be changed with this.
Okay. The other thing, I think, in looking at the kind of public comments, I also think that the fact that the concern and the enforcement issue and everything about this is in such a geographically limited area means that the solution for that is is something that needs to also be more targeted to that, and maybe that's an overlay zone, or maybe that's a higher fines for something in that area or whatever. But I think that keeping this definition more tight just for that little portion doesn't make sense. And so I think that the benefits of this more broadly kind of do make a lot of sense. I know that this is how I found out that I apparently broke this law by buying my first house and renting out 3 rooms in it, because that's how I paid for it. And I think that, again, it's measurement. It's how do you know these things? Because there are instances of that. There are instances of developers buying up places, and it's all hard to get. But I do think that the idea that there's a house with bedrooms that people can't move into because it's like, well, we had a kid, so now we can't have renters and things, makes a lot of sense on updating this. I also, the part that really I found interesting and most kind of spoke to me was the historical look at the term, and how it was actually for a very long time about cooking, which I just find interesting that, like, previously the idea of family or of household, like, centered around like, oh, we eat together, so we're a family. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense to broaden that term of family as much as we can, but also to look at all these kind of instances. And I think that the idea of an exception for, kids under whatever age makes a lot of sense, because, yeah, it would be crazy to be like, well, you had your 3rd kid, get out. So that's all.
I agree that the idea of cooking it's cute. Part of me is like, maybe we should go back to that. Like, we all take care of each other, but also hard to enforce. Are you cooking together enough? So I would like to make a motion on the matter of PLN PCM 2026-00244, definition of family text amendment. I move that the commission recommend that the city council adopt this petition with the following recommendations. First, for section 2B, amend to, in the case of efficiency units, no more than 2 persons per unit for units less than 300 square feet, and otherwise no more than 3 persons per unit. And second, add language that for the purposes of this definition, each person under 18 shall be considered 1/2 a person. And I would accept friendly amendments if somebody wants to workshop that.
Could you say the first part again?
Yeah.
The studio part?
Yeah. In the case of efficiency units, no more than 2 persons per unit for units less than 300 square feet, and otherwise no more than 3 persons per unit.
I think we should take another shot at giving an exception for kids.
Yeah, I think this. So the question of the studio one then is about whether or not it's 2 or 3, basically.
The question is, so like for the smallest size studio and efficiency units, we're still putting a cap on it 200, or at 2 people. Mm-hmm. And then once we go up, right, it's not just falling back purely to the, I guess, it's not falling back purely to the building code where like every additional 100 square feet you can add an additional person. Because like there are studios that have 700, 800, even 900 square feet. And at that point you're talking 6 people, I think.
So just, I kind of want to bring this back to procedures. We had a motion.
Sorry. Yeah.
I think before we really dive into discussion of that motion, it either needs to get a second or
sorry.
Not get a second, just to make sure it's easier for us when we put everything together.
Yeah. Yes.
Do we have a second?
Okay. I guess I got to try again, or somebody else has got to try.
I mean, my thoughts and suggestion would be that I think the studio one is probably all right, and that it would make more sense to just put a thing that says excluding children under the age of 16 or children under the age of whatever we pick.
Once your kid turns 16, though, are you gonna move?
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna kick the oldest kid out or something? That seems like.
True, I guess that number jumped out to me because of parking.
You guys, 16 comes really fast. One day you have a baby, the next day you have a 16-year-old, and then you have to move. But I know what you mean. Like, is there a car? But do you guys have a suggestion over there for what we might do to allow?
I would suggest, just to make sure that we're not stepping on any other like federal or state law about fair housing or anything like that, that if you get to this, where I would just say something like excluding one of the occupants' children and leave it at that.
Okay.
So that eliminates the 18-year-old high school student.
Yeah.
You know, who's had those, right?
Yeah.
Or exactly, or somebody who because of either, because of their health or whatnot, can't live on their own and they live with their parents or their siblings or something like that.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
I like that one too.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Question, if we're fully excluding children, how does that impact foster parents and the potential for abuse or overcrowding there? I think that's as gentle as I can ask it.
Are those under like a different zoning designation or? Well, I guess foster houses wouldn't be because those are just.
Well,
wherever.
first we should acknowledge that the original motion failed. I don't think that happened.
Sorry.
For lack of a second. But I don't know the answer to that. I do think all of these questions are why some cities have just removed it altogether without the complications.
Yeah.
Well, no, we don't want to do that. What can we just make a suggestion that would you guys prefer if we ask if you guys want to consider other language or what other cities do, or would you prefer that we just make the suggestion that children are considered, like children of occupants
I
are
prefer
considered
that you
different?
make a motion that the commission ultimately is comfortable with, right? And can vote on. Whether that's for or against is up to you. But our concern is just making sure that whatever that motion is, it's clear enough that we can relay it to the city council. They're going to be the decision makers.
Yeah.
And they also initiated this. So they asked for it. They're asking for your recommendation on what you think is best long-term for all the city goals when you think about them collectively.
And their process includes wordsmithing and all of that kind of stuff.
If they want to, yeah. Yeah, they have full flexibility.
Yeah. Would you hate it if we tabled it and asked you to
Only if
add language?
only if you don't give us specific direction. If it's language that you think you can add here, I would prefer you just do it. Otherwise,
Okay.
we're taking time on other agendas and things like that.
Okay. I'm going to try. I think that I think I don't. I'm going to make this part, and then if you want to do a friendly concerning studio. Okay. Sorry, I'm stuck searching. Okay. Based on the information presented in this discussion, I move that the commission recommend that the city council adopt this petition with the following recommendation, that children of an occupant are not allowed outside of occupancy limits.
I think you could say excluded from the
Okay.
calculation or something like that.
Children of an occupant of the residence are excluded from the occupancy limits.
Okay, I'll second, and I would like to offer a friendly. I would add And for section 2B, amend to, in the case of efficiency units, no more than 2 persons per unit for units less than 300 square feet, and otherwise no more than 3 persons per unit.
Yeah, I would accept that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Just a quick discussion. Could you, I'm still a little confused on the word, on what that says.
Okay, so in the case of efficiency units, for units that have less than 300 square feet, like the really smallest studios, those still have a maximum of 2 people.
Yeah.
Every other studio, so any studio that has 300 square feet or more, there's a maximum occupancy of 3 people.
Okay.
It's pretty simple.
Oh, that, so you're just adding that the smaller studio is only 2?
Exactly.
That's all? Okay, gotcha,
Yes.
gotcha. Sorry, I was like, is there math in there? What's happening? Okay.
Commissioner Burrows?
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett?
No.
Commissioner Rosenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan? No. Passes 3-2.
Thank you very much. And our last item, the text amendment for affordable housing incentives fines.
Can I ask a point of order? Personal privilege. Maybe I'm just being curious, but could we ever find out why you voted no or what you would have voted yes for? Is that a discussion we can have someday or right now or
I think
never?
probably we can talk about that after, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think you
Is that
can
okay?
talk about that amongst yourselves after.
Okay,
if you want.
thanks. Thank you.
All right, so this proposed text amendment is a city-initiated text amendment that will adopt the fines for violating our affordable housing incentives program standards into the zoning code. So the affordable housing incentives, or the AHI program, is a planning process that was implemented in 2023 as a way to allow for increased density in exchange for affordable housing. The AHI code establishes a certain set of affordability benchmarks that applicants must meet. This is enforced through a restrictive covenant, which is a legally binding agreement that is recorded against the property, and through fines. The applicant agrees to the terms of the restrictive covenant at the time of signing. The purpose of this text amendment is primarily a clarification and cleanup text amendment. It does not change or implement any new policies. Currently, the code refers to the enforcement mechanism of the fines for violating AHI requirements as being listed in the consolidated fee schedule. However, the consolidated fee schedule cannot legally list fines, as fines are not considered fees. Therefore, this text amendment is proposing to place the specific fines for violating the AHI requirements directly into the code. The proposed amendment includes 3 specific fines to add to the zoning code for the violation of these AHI regulations. The first is a $100 per day fine for any unit that is designated as affordable through the AHI that is renting in excess of the agreed rental rate, plus the difference between the market rate of the unit and the approved rental rate that was agreed upon by the applicant. There is also a fine of $500 proposed for any affordable unit being utilized as a short-term rental. And finally, there is an additional $100 fine per day, they're all per day fines, for violating any other requirements within the restrictive covenant that is not otherwise addressed here. Placing these fines into the code is intended for the city to provide transparency and clarification to staff, residents, applicants, and landowners on the penalties for violation of the restrictive covenant and reinforce the protections and maintainment of the affordable housing that is provided through the AHI program. Based on the findings listed in this staff report and the standards for zoning text amendments, planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council.
All right, thank you. Go ahead and open up for public comment. Hearing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to us for a discussion or motion.
Based on the information presented in discussion, I move that we pass this.
Second.
Wait, I think.
Wait a second.
Commissioner Burrows?
Oh, wait, sorry, what? Oh, I thought you were.
No, I did have a question. I was just trying to formulate it, and then things got fast. I have a clarification question about one of the proposals. The first, no, second. Can you go back to the screen? So, is that no, the actual three, yeah,
This one.
500 a day for a short-term rental. That is for owners of the building, like.
Yes, that's correct. So one of these standards, one of the things they agreed to on the restrictive covenant is that they cannot use any unit that has been designated as affordable through the affordable housing incentives cannot be used as a short-term rental.
What if a leaseholder wanted to use it as a short-term rental?
My understanding is that would be
That's still
binding.
the owner's responsibility to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So if someone who's leasing a space is doing that and it violates their restrictive covenant, then that's the owner is completely responsible for enforcing that. It probably violates whatever lending funding agreements they have as well, but.
Okay. We'll talk about it after, but there's no reason not to vote for it now.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, then we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and vote.
Commissioner Burrows?
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield?
Aye.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Pass.
All right, that is all. Thank you.
Thank you.